right, got another project. This is another third rail M1b. These were built circa 2004, 2 cab numbers apiece in the M1A and M1B variants. This is the 6755 cab number of the M1B, and I'm really happy to have this one because this is the one that resides at the Railroad Museum of Pennsylvania in Strasburg, PA. So as you can see, it's in pretty good shape. It runs and drives pretty good. I think it's never really been run. The only real problem with it right now is it's missing the smoke box door Keystone, so it's a little challenge there. My plans for this engine are to weather it and install Blunami. I want to do another Blunami install. It'll give me the opportunity to try Blunami in multi-train mode, and Blunami supports the 2 Penzie whistles that I need for my projects. So I think that'll be a good fit. So we'll take a closer look at this engine before we go into the shop. When I get in there, we'll take an even closer look as I disassemble it and get it ready for the Blunami install. So as you can see, Third Rail always did a pretty good job with Penzie paint. I think that's a pretty acceptable shade of DGLE. And so you can see here, here's an M1A version I've had for a pretty long time now. This still has the same electronics, the Train America EOB, the original electronics, I should say. And the only thing I did to this was I popped in the, I think it was the Lionel 6759 M1A chip from the same era, about 2004. These came out around the same time Lionel offered their M1A. These were much superior at the time. I'll show you some other stuff here. I always like these opening turret hatches. They didn't do it on all their engines, but they did them on a lot. It's pretty cool. Of course, the cab vent works too. So yeah, we are missing the Keystone. And for the price I got this engine for, I'm not going to complain. So the Blunami install be a lot like that H10, but I expect this to actually run nicer because this has a better gear ratio, bigger pitman. So we're going to have some nice electromechanical resolution for the control loop. So this thing ought to crawl very smoothly and just operate very smoothly throughout its operating speed range, which will be realistic, of course. I am not going to use the smoke unit. It does not look like it's ever been used. I don't see any evidence of that at all, which is good. If I can actually film the funnel there. But as you know, that makes me happy. I have no plans to use smoke in this engine at all. So we'll get into the shop here, start taking it apart, getting it set up for the Blunami install. All right, we're gonna head into the shop here, and just wanted to show you. I mean, let's remember this is like a 20-plus-year-old engine now with vintage electronics, and but one thing I hope to improve is the slow speed operation. Now, with EOB, you could adjust low speed operation in the form of lowering the first speed stop. However, sometimes even at the lowest setting, the engine might still be a little quick on that first step. The old school trick was to make your own tack tape strip. You know, you would add more stripes to it basically to increase the feedback resolution into the cruise control loop. This one here exhibits a pretty high takeoff. It steps out smartly, as I like to say. Well, I don't know, for 20-year-old system, it is tweakable. You could fix it up. Sometimes it's kind of charming to run these old EOBs, but I've got plenty of them, and I want to do another Blunami project. Here's my original M1A, and this one I did a little work on. I got the EOB system tweaked in pretty good. This has always been a pretty good runner considering, again, you know, we've got 20-year-old electronics here. Again, this one here is the one I popped a Lionel chip in there to get some decent Penzi sounds. Let me see if I remembered that cab number correctly. Let's see if I can light off the crew talk here. Let's see. Wow, I did. Man, that's good. All right, anyway. So, I got this one tweaked in, so you'll notice this one will start up a little slower. Just a bit slower. Okay, so we've started with a disassembly. And I don't think this thing's ever been opened. There is a battery in here. I have no idea what condition it's in. We'll have to take a look. I know it's completely dead, because when you shut off track power, it doesn't wind the sounds down. Good speakers in these, 3-watt, 8-ohm speakers. Will work perfectly with the Blunami board. And check this out. Let me get the shell off. I want to look at this a little closer. I think this is probably just like maybe production numbers, production notes. I don't know. Any case, kind of interesting. I'm going to leave it in there. Pretty neat. Yeah, that battery ain't looking too good. Anyway, this is the old classic EOB. So here's the motherboard. Here's your drive, MOSFETs. There's probably a big bridge rectifier. Yeah, there it is. Big bridge rectifier right there. And these are the Lionel OEM components. So you've got your R2LC, you've got your sound ROM, and you've got your ginormous Rail Sounds power supply. It's a 5-volt power supply just to run this board. And I don't know. Anyway, pretty huge. These are good sounds. The OEM NOR_B board. I have tons of these out of these third rails. It's not a bad sound set. I don't know what whistle that is, but I do believe it's kind of like a lower bit rate or playback rate or whatever, because the quality isn't really as nice as Lionel OEM sounds. I think these were like the licensed sounds Lionel would give to Train America and Weaver Atlas, whoever was using Train America boards. K-Line got these directly too, I think, from Lionel. Anyway, you can see all the wiring in here. I'm probably gonna save the tender markers and the doghouse light, the reverse light. I'll just tidy this up. This is the old TMCC antenna, and like typical of third rail, they would have isolated the whole frame and the tender shell off of the trucks, so the axles would be insulated. So I've pointed that out before in other videos, if you ever work on these, just to be mindful of that. If you miss one of those isolating washers and you put it all back together, you trash the radio signal. So let's get this battery out of here. Well, at least it didn't completely explode. I don't know how to read. I don't know if that's like a date code on there, but anyway, it's out of here. Since this is a good working EOB setup, I'm not really just butchering it out of here, trying to do a nice job. I mean, there's a lot to be said. I mean, these are 20-year-old electronics. I basically just dumped it on the layout and started running it, you know. I mean, even with that dead battery, which isn't really needed other than to keep up the rail sounds during like power interruptions. Also gives you like automatic kind of shutdown sounds when you remove power from the track. But kind of say, you know, this stuff isn't that bad. There are some things to look out for. I've pointed out before that you want to jumper the AC input to these bridge rectifiers, and that would be these little guys here, because there are some weak traces on this board that carry power around, and in the event of a short or like a bridged pickup roller, you can get some unwanted fireworks in there, and it will render the motherboard completely inoperative and maybe smoke an R2LC. Ask me how I know all that stuff. So anyway, I'm going to continue taking this out of here. All right, EOB's completely out. You can see, one thing I like about these coast-to-coast tenders, man, you got plenty of real estate in here. And the funny thing is, I'll show you a size comparison here real quick, what we're going from and what we're going to. This is the Blunami board compared to EOB. It's pretty wild. So one other thing I should mention, all the switches, the sound pot, you know, these are gone now. I won't need them because everything's controlled through the app. So I do need to supply DC voltage to this board, just like the H10 project. So I have a full bridge rectifier here, and I'm going to use, this time around, I'm going to use a 1000 microfarad filter cap. And, oh no, it's a 470. I got 1000, sorry. I'll find it. Anyway, I'm going to use one of these brackets. I think I'm going to mount this like here. So, and as I take stuff apart, I'm just reminded how, you know, the tender shell was floated as an antenna, and pretty much everything you take apart was like grommeted and isolated. So if you ever do work on these and you're trying to keep the TMCC functionality, or you know, you're trying to service some TMCC issue, this is something to look at. Make sure all these isolators are in here. All right, here's my Blunami board mount. And like the H10 project, I made this kind of adapter plate so I could utilize these two mounting holes here. So these voids kind of clear the components under this board. And then what I'll do is I'll just kind of double-sided sticky tape this to the deck here. Plenty of room in here. All right, so that's the basic layout. You know, the beauty of this board is I don't have to hook up, you know, the run program switch or the volume pod or anything like that. So the rest of the outputs I'm going to wire up for the lighting and obviously the motor. And yeah, pretty cool. One thing though that still kind of weirds me out a little bit is that there's no heat sinking required at all. I guess because this is, you know, a 4 amp board, and when they mean 4 amps, that's the output to the motor. I'm so used to this 3-rail stuff where, you know, they had 10 amp MOSFETs and these big heat sinks, and you know, you'd probably, a lot of times I'd be spending time trying to figure out how I was going to heat sink those electric railroad boards because it had a similar setup. But anyway, this board, as you can see, there's no heat sinking required external to the board. Kind of cool. I mean, that H10 has been running like a champ, so I'm sure this will too. But it's pretty wild. All right, so I was just working on the 3D Kadee mount, and on my other two M1 projects, I fashioned this out of some brass stock I had around. I'm not going to do that again. I really like these Kadee mounts because I can get them dialed in real nice. As you can see, this one clears these signal and air lines, and there's also there's another air line underneath here. So a K1C can spit those out in like 5 minutes. So I'll usually print a few versions just to dial in the clearances and stuff like that. So you can see this is the first version, and I had to move the slot around. This is the second version with the coved corners, and it looks like I can mount my Kadee pretty much directly to that transverse beam or whatever you want to call it. And I'm gonna use one of these extended 740 whatever couplers. I use these on the other M1s because of that platform that sticks out over here. I gotta clear that. So if I actually mount this box flush with my mount and use these extended shank couplers, the coupler head will stick out just right. I should go back and review some photos I took of this actual 6755 in Strasbourg. At some point I also made this extended Kadee height checker. It's really useful for getting under platforms and things like that. So I was able to determine if my adapter was going to work. And I printed many of these at one time. These are just very simple Kadee shims. The trick is when you make these 3D mounts, no matter what type you come up with, always make the vertical height a little higher so you can dial in the coupler height. It's easier to shim the coupler than it is to try grinding away on your 3D print or just keep printing the same thing over and over again. All right, so here's my finalized design, I think. You can see how I cove the corners. All right, so I'm going to send that to the K1C and move on with some more wiring. All right, here's my wiring so far with the 8-wire tether. That's what these engines used at the time. And so here's my connections for power, motor, headlight. Looks like I can only really do the cab light and the class lights. That's what I decided on because I need to bring the F plus common out to those lighting features. I'm not going to do a firebox. I was able to do a firebox in my H10 because I had a 10-wire tether. This is kind of what, excuse my chicken scratch here, but this is kind of the original EOB wiring in the color code, and then this is the modified Blunami wiring. So I will be disabling the, I'll be removing the sensors, so that frees up a couple wires, and then I'm not going to use smoke. So I'll use the FX4 to control the cab light, FX3 for class. So that's what that looks like so far. I do have to make up a harness for the tender lighting. That'll probably be last, I think. I'm going to get into the engine now. Going to disassemble it and remove that EOB sensor. Probably move some wiring around. There's also a power supply in here, regulated power supply. As you know, a lot of third rails, the headlights and the class lights will be on all the time. I think it's probably a 6-volt power supply. That's what I always find in there. So I gotta figure out what dropping resistor. I'm gonna try to keep the incandescent lights, and I know the Blunami board will support it. I'm going to try to keep them. I'll have to come up with a dropping resistor for that. So it'll be quite the adventure in there. These M1s have a little hitch. This power reverse has a linkage here to the valve gear, to this bell crank, and it looks like it broke there. I'm not going to sweat that because there's a little brass wire that connects in there. Anyway, the boiler kind of wants to, once you get the steam chest screw out, it looks like this guy, and the 2 screws here on the rear, you gotta sort of slide the chassis up forward a little bit. Now what'll stop you from going too far is the quiet drive belt. So let's see if I can convince this to come down. All right, you see I got this. This bell crank's actually loose on this pivot. Doesn't appear to be soldered. I swear my other M1b, that was soldered, and I had to take this little brass wire. I had to pick it out, unbend it with a pick, and I was able to leave the reach rod in there. So, I don't know. I do have a resistance soldering setup now, so I'm not worried about damage like that. Anyway, I'm still working to get this apart. I don't know what's holding it up. I know there's a bunch of wires that are all jammed up in here for the EOB sensor. Some third rails will have, this ash pan will have some kind of plates that you can unscrew, and it'll help drop the tail beam out from beneath the cab. So I'm gonna work at this a little bit more, hopefully get this boiler off. All right, we're almost free. Yeah, there is a lot of wiring back here, and it's tight. So I gotta take that JST connector apart. Let's get our pry driver in there. I did it. Oh, wait a minute, there's one more. All right, now we're really free. All right, here's our EOB sensor we'll be removing. Here's our EOB visual encoder. I don't know if I've ever gotten a third rail with all these, I don't know, factory stickers in here. Interesting. Boy, that's tight. I hate these things. Is that melted to the motor or is it glued? See that? Oh, got it. All right, little reach rods off there. Here's my JST connector for the boiler wiring harness. So this will be the function plus, and then FX3 and 4 in the headlight. So I think I'll use 3 and 4 for the class lights and cab light. I can't do firebox flicker in here. So I'd rather have the cab lights more noticeable. So that's what's going on here. This replaces the rather large, it was like an 8-position JST connector, but it was only using 4 wires. And that was for the smoke unit, switched power, ground, chuff input. And then there was power for the power supply up in here, the 6-volt power supply for the constantly on headlight and class lights. All right, so I want to repair my lifting arm, reversing arm here. And I am unleashing a new technology, at least for me, on my workbench here. I have a resistance soldering unit. And I got this from the Chi-Town Union Station when it was closing. They were kind enough to give me a good deal on this right out of their workshop. So the idea is that instead of using heat transfer, we use current flow through a joint that creates heat right at the joint, isolates the heat at the joint. If you're familiar with Ohm's law in a series circuit, the most resistance in that circuit gets the most voltage, and that'll create us the most heat in a very isolated location. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put some liquid solder in this joint. You see I removed some paint from here. I'm going to use this carbon tip applied here, hopefully with my current flow, proper current path here to my alligator clip. I'm going to use the low setting first. We'll melt that solder right where we need to without applying heat to like a whole general area, which is a real pain. You probably saw me do that on that Big 6 project. It's really common for third rail to have just a few loose parts here and there. And I think I'm really excited to try this. So Let's give it a shot. I'm going to apply a little liquid solder to this. The joint looks fairly clean, so I'm not too worried about it. Just clean some of that out of there. So there is a foot pedal to control this guy. It's very low voltage, but fairly high current. So if I do this right, I won't get any sparks, but I'm going to apply the my carbon rod here, and I'm going to hit my foot pedal. What's nice is I can apply a little pressure too to the joint. Hold it in position. Oh yeah, look at that. Didn't really take though. Try it again. I think I got it. Kind of exciting. A little squirrely, sorry. That was like my first time I ever fixed something with the resistance soldering unit, but that's on there. That ain't coming apart. See what it looks like from the backside. Yeah, not bad. I just gotta clean up the extra solder there. Cool. I just had to get that clip on there and not be so scared. You can actually feel the transformer buzz a little bit. That was so cool. I gotta try something here. Since I have this out, I'm thinking I want to play just a little bit here. See if I can find my foot pedal. I gotta get better at that. See, I keep lifting the carbon off there before I release the pedal. So let me hold the carbon down and release the pedal. Let it cool. I can maintain pressure on here. This is just an exercise for consideration of future projects. Hey, look at this. Did you look at this? Is it still warm? It's still a little warm. What? Look at that. So, with a little bit more skillful application of the flux and the solder, I don't have to fear fixing my brass third rails anymore. That's pretty amazing. I mean, that's just, you know, just a scrap job here, but sorry about the little side quest here. But since I had this unit out, I wanted to play with it some more. That is really on there too. All right, so I wanted to do a little sound and motion test before I move on with the lighting efforts here. So let's connect. See what we got. Very cool. Let's see what whistle it. First of all, let's go select a whistle. Heavy. I'm gonna stick with a heavy chuff. Anyway, let's. Oh, you know what's. It's pretty loud. Let's get right down to the pensies. What's this one? Get some reverb on there. Man. All right, there we go. All right. Let's give it a little. Right off the bat, motor's backwards. All right. This project's a failure. Let's scrap it. We're done. That is pretty slow right out the box, you know. Very cool. I'm playing around with setting the chuff just for the heck of it right now. Looks like about 40. I'm trying to watch to see if the chuff drifts off the crank pin position here. It's fallen back a little bit. Let's see. Oh, it didn't take. I don't know why. Try that instead. I think it's pretty close. A lot easier than setting up a chuff switch. Like on my other M1b there, you know, I machined out a slot in the frame and put a 3D printed magnet cam, you know, to trigger my chuffs. Nice thing is I got it triggered on my crank pin position, but there aren't many systems in O-Gauge other than TMCC that allows for that. So EOB, Legacy, Proto 2, Proto 3 DCS, your chuff generation's coming from the encoder. So this is interesting. I'm going to play with this some more because this is actually kind of fun. Let's see what I come up with. One thing they do a real nice job with is this kind of automatic labor simulation. So if that's really cool. I think this is something that Lionel tried to do with their force coupler, and that thing does not work right in my Class A. Doesn't seem to trigger consistently, and then in reverse, it just doesn't even work. It kind of just goes crazy. Some pretty basic speed settings here, so I'm going to try just turning these up. Yeah, that sounds good. See, it counts up the speed steps too. Oh yeah. With momentum, you get some more of that dynamic exhaust. Wow, that's pretty nice. I could probably play with that deceleration. I could probably shorten it a little bit. Real smooth. All right. I think that's good enough for the initial setup. We'll play around with it some more when we get it back together. But right now, I've got a lot of work to do for the lighting, so I gotta get to work. All right, so the locomotive wiring's done. It's pretty simple. You know, it's been simplified with the smoke unit. Just kind of retired in there, not wired up. I just have some leads to the LED headlight and a cab light, and that's how I have them connected up here. I had to redo this connector once already because I had it oriented wrong, but it's my LED headlight. These are the LEDs I got off Amazon. I'm not the happiest with them, but they're fine. They're just 0603 SMD style, and they'll work fine. They're nice and bright. So with the 5.5K resistors I use, will be probably a little too bright. I don't know. Anyway, I'm going to try to get this back together now. At least get the boiler and the chassis remarried here. All right, so tender's going to go back together. Everything's working. Got my lights configured the way I like. So one last look. So I got some fairly clean wiring. The one drawback of the Blunami board is the way it manages the outputs for the lights. It's pretty close to the full rail power coming in, so that's why I converted a lot of stuff over to LED. It's a little more work, but I think it's worth it. So this will go back together, and I got a few last things to do in the locomotive, and then it's out for a test run, I think. All right, so our Kadee mount's pretty much set up. That's what I ended up with. Like I said, on the other two M1 projects, I fabricated stuff out of brass. On this one, I chose to do a 3D printed mount. On the other ones too, I did that Barco steam line. I'm not going to do it on this one just to keep this project moving along. I think I've found plenty to do on this one so far. So let's see, we've got a good matchup on our height gauge. I think the tender's pretty much done, ready for paint. All right, so it's time to make the smoke box front Keystone. And what I'm going to do is use one of these resin prints. They're just painted caboose red. I mixed a tiny bit of black into it. I think it's toluidine red or something it's supposed to be. Anyway, I have my decals here, an old microscale set, and it's pretty nice. They give you some lettering and cab number info, stuff like that. So there's some numbers here. I used these many years ago on a Rail M1, I think. So I'm gonna get to it, and this is probably like my least favorite thing to do, is decaling. To make my life a little easier, I'm trying to find some adjacent number sets here. I got a 67 right there. but I don't see a 55. That'd be too nice. All right. All right. So this is what I got. I don't know. It's not as nice as the original brass etched factory version, but it'll do for now. Maybe I'll find a proper Keystone for this one day, but at least I know who to blame if I don't like it that much. I think it'll be fine once I get some weathering on it. So this engine's back together. I got my holes filled, and I think it's time to take it out for a test run. Yeah, no, that Keystone stunk. I'm not using it. So I went through the trouble of figuring out what the heck was going on. This thing is just dimensionally off. I had made it using some file I found on the internet, so I went and hassled out making one from scratch. It was actually harder than I thought it would be. So it's got the raised edges. This is actually to the correct dimensions. It should be like about 20 inches wide at the widest, and that top of the Keystone's like 17 inches, bottom's 11 and a half, and 17 and a half inches tall, I think. So that's why I ended up with, it seemed like more real estate under here. I could have tweaked this file, but it turned out this came out a little more crisp, so I printed a bunch more of these out. I'm going to paint them up and re-decal it. And also, my aging resin printer, I printed them flat, so I don't have any of those ghosting lines or whatever. So anyway, that's that for the Keystone for now. All right, so here's the new one. Probably lost about a whole morning to this thing, but I was just obsessed. I don't know why I let that other Keystone get as far as it did without really checking its proportionality or whatever. But I did manage to find a good diagram of the Pennsy locomotive Keystones online, and was able to use that to create a new one in Tinkercad. It was more of a pain than I thought it would be. I thought, oh yeah, nothing to it, just a couple rectangles and triangles and stuff. And to really get it right, I had to play around. I built it to like 1/4 inch scale in Tinkercad too. I probably should have doubled the scale. Anyway, when it came time to printing it, I did 12 of them. I did them flat, so you don't see any aliasing or ghosting lines or whatever they call that stuff. And then I found some nice Tamiya pure red spray paint in my cabinet, so I hit it with that. So I got a nice, smooth, glossy finish on there. And again, I chopped into my microscale decals, and here we go. So this lays right over the third rail Keystones I have on my other M1s. And so I got 12 more if I ever have to relive this experience. I even went ahead and ordered more decals, this time from K4 Decals. I really like their stuff, but I'm glad I had this old decal set around, and now I can go put this on and hopefully get this engine out on the layout. as you can see, as we leave the roundhouse here, 6755 is now ready to ride the rails. This is now my second Blunami project, and I'm pretty pleased with how it turned out. We had a few little challenges, but I came away with a newfound skill in the form of resistant soldering. So now when I encounter brass models with broken parts, I'm not so worried about reattaching them. There are a couple of tweaks and adjustments to the lighting effort in the locomotive. What I discovered was that there was actually no power supply like I've encountered in other third rails. It was just a couple grain of wheat bulbs for the cab light and headlight hooked up directly across track power with dropping resistors. So I had shown those getting replaced with LEDs. But the only other thing I changed was I decided not to light the class lights. I also filled the holes in the boiler where the LED leads came out, and also had to carefully trim the class light housings with a Dremel because they were kind of elongated to hold those LEDs. So all in all, a pretty intriguing little project. I'm really enjoying playing around with Blunami. I think it runs very well. Drawback is it's not a complete layout control system like TMCC and Legacy, so you do have to sort of dual-wield remotes. But I really like the motor control and the sounds and the adjustability of everything. I do have a few more engines that could certainly benefit from these Blunami upgrades. This is very well suited to upgrading engines that don't have command control or have command control with semi-inoperative features. It's certainly filling the void right now with the dwindling presence of TMCC components. And yeah, I'm going to look forward to doing a few more of these, hopefully in a near future.